Well, I think that was a very interesting process because I think that you at Enteleki did a lot of distillation and brought a lot of confluences together, bringing in different facets of different stories and interweaving them. And I think what was challenging was the idea of having a linear narrative, because narratives are generally sequential, and then trying to figure out ways in which you could disengage from the linear narrative and go into moments where you can just kind of have riffs and confluences, so that you kind of have the ability in the boxes to be able to have a sequential story or go based on smells or based on feelings or based on brushes and disengage from that narrative completely. And I think that is something that's very unique in the sense that since this project brought together Enteleki and the Museum of London, I think that it was an interesting synergy in terms of shifting the level of authenticity potentially from museums tend to think of authenticity as being the object holds the authenticity. And I think where you come from, it's more that the story and the people interacting with the object bring a certain level of authenticity. And that, I think, was something that was very interesting and challenging. Mm-hmm. Oh, it was fascinating. It was great because what I was really wanting for the boxes to be is that they are facilitators and they're mechanisms that allow people to express and bring other things themselves. And I think, you know, right now they're a snapshot in time, and you want to be able to add things to them and take things away and have them always constantly evolving. And I think that's what it should be. It's fantastic. It's great. I'm very interested in the idea of the power of self-direction and self-directed learning and experiential learning. And I think that the trick for the boxes was to be able to let people, so if people, for example, liked brushes, then you could move and transition from brushes from, you know, for Doris, the act of scrubbing her front steps to then scrubbing your face and then putting powder on your face. And so there are object hinges, there are action hinges, and there are different ways to engage different people depending on what they like. So some people might like a lot of light play, and so there are lots of different things you can play with, the little prisms, you know, flashlights. Some people might like sounds and music, and so it was very important to not just look at the objects, but, you know, I did a lot of not graphs, but, you know, maps of experiential graphs and, you know, oh, there are gloves in hers, let's put mittens in his, so that there's a parallel hinge that you can go from one box to the other. So the idea had been actually that the two boxes would be performed in the same space. And so Doris's box was very much about intimate experiences and her personal transition and her personal journey over thresholds, whereas Darnley's was much more about migration of journey from, you know, one place to another place and contrasts of extremes. And so, you know, Doris's box is very much more passing objects in a very intimate way, whereas Darnley's box is much more spilling out into the space. And I had thought that those two would be very interesting in terms of interaction and confluence, so that you'd have a way of interacting with the stories that kind of evokes what their experience was like for them personally.